Hi, this is a video number 4. This is where I would like to cover edging only, because it's quite a lot to cover in this section. I'll try to keep it as brief as, but it may take a while, so be ready. Now, if you see the edging button is lit, that means you can apply the edging. There will be occasions, which I haven't covered before, but if your material is too thin, that means we may not allow to apply the edging to it. So for instance, let's say we'll choose a 12mm MDF, which I think I'll choose 9 as well, just in case. Right, we've got 30mm, 9mm. Okay, so let's add a row. I can add as many rows as I need. And let's try 12mm moisture resistant MDF, which will be, say, again, it comes in lengths up to 3 meters, so I can do whichever measurement, doesn't really matter. 500. 12mm still allows to put the edging on, so let's clear it. The one that we definitely cannot do will be 9mm and thinner. Now here, 500 by 1. See, the edging button is locked. That means on this thickness of the material, you cannot put the edging on. Now, let's go one by one with the edging options. 30mm MDF, I may want it to edge. And let's see what options are being given. So, application type, we've got none. We don't need to do the edging if we don't have to. Standard MDF would be a melamine tape, which would be used to be put on the edge of MDF to make sure that you don't need to sand it. So it would require only a single coat of primer, slight rub down, and a top coat. So 2 coats instead of at least 4 times sanding, 4 different coats between the finishing. So realistically, this edging would save a lot of time when it comes to finishing the MDF on site. Even if we do spray finishing, we would always use this tape before we start the spray finishing process, and normally we would use this tape on the edges which are exposed. The edges that are not seen, you don't really require it. Edge rounding. Edge rounding is the radius of the smoothness of the board edge. So again, you can select 0.4, which is just a tiny pencil edge, 1mm, which is again slightly bigger radius, 2mm is slightly bigger again. For doors and any spray finish materials, the most standard ones are 1 and 2mm. So let's click with the 2mm. Select sides to be edged. We are giving you a preview of the actual part, and these options here are showing which edges you would like to edge, and you can select them to be edged. So if I click on this edge, which means just one long edge, see, we've done a line. This is where the edging would be done. If I need 2 sides, maybe it's going to be a side panel or panel in the middle of the room or something else, doesn't really matter. It shows me which edges are being edged. So if you go through these options, 3 edges normally being used for side panels, where one long edge is going to be, say, cut to the wall, etc. So you don't really need to edge it because you're not going to see it, and you might even cut it off. If it's a door, then you go all 4 sides. That means it's all 4 sides covered, and the red and the blue, it just shows you which edging will be done first and which will cover afterwards. It's not really essential for MDF tape because it cannot be seen. It's more obvious for solid lipping, where, say, maybe this part is going to be laminated afterwards, etc. And if I'm choosing 8mm oak lipping, again, radius in this instance would be none. But if I do all 4 sides, this is going to be more obvious rather than MDF tape. So this is just for you to bear in mind that you've got various options, how you want to finish it, which sides are going to be seen, and whether you want to see the joint between the lipping or no. So let's go back to MDF tape, because this is the one that I was after initially. 1mm radius. Let's do all 4 sides. Add edging. So MDF edging is covered. Now oak veneer. Again, this is where it's quite crucial to make sure that you have typed in measurements correctly, like length and width. If you go into edging section, we are showing you a board and you can see the grain of the board. As I mentioned before, if you're looking at the door, like a wardrobe door, you're seeing the height. We see it as a length. Now, if I'm doing, it's okay with the long parts, which are easy to control and easy to see, but what if I need a horizontal grain, say on the cabinet door? How do I type in? So instead of 2780, if my cabinet door height is say 720, which is standard, if I was to type in 720 here, the grain would be vertical. The width of the door that I need is 596. So let me type in 596, which will mean that I'm trying to do a horizontal grain here, and let's do 720 as the width. Again, we can go into edging option and it shows the door. So now, as you see, the door grain is horizontal, and it has been changed only by swapping around length and width. But this is the area where you can check whether your input is actually correct for what you are using it for. So I'll leave it as it is. Now we've got a couple options. It could either be solid lipping or could be veneer edging. Normally we're going with the veneer edging, 1mm 0.5. Doesn't really make much of a difference. Rounding 0.4. Again, I want it done all around, but I want it to be done as such because I don't want to see any joints from the edge of the door. Okay, add edging. Melamines. Again, same scenario. If the material will have grain, you will see the grain. Otherwise, it will not matter. Again, application type, we've got standard MFC. This is MFC board, melamine face chipboard. 2 options available, either standard MFC, which would be using hot melt glue, which is being applied to the board, and then the edging is being pressed onto it, or EarTech, which is a glueless joint. It's a new laser technology, which is allowing a zero joint application, which means it's more suitable for wet environments and bathrooms, etc., because it doesn't have glue and the edging is being melted onto the board itself. It's quite waterproof itself. So let's select available options. Okay, I've got 0.8mm thickness of the edging or 2mm. As a standard, we use 0.8 or 1mm, so let's go with it. Rounding is required because the edges would be sharp, which are sharp enough to even cut yourself. So unless you can't see the edges and you're using it for different applications like face framed furniture, etc., then obviously you're not going to see the edges and you want to get a nice and clean joint. So then you select none. But for anything else like shelves, tabletops, etc., rounding is required always. Otherwise, it's not going to be user friendly to what you are ordering. And again, I know that initially I called this as tabletop. One part of it is going up against the wall, so I don't need to edge it. Maybe I'll have a joint. For the joint, I need to have a nice clean joint, so I'm putting the edging on as well. And now I've done 3 sides. Add edging. Next one, it's the same thing, just slightly thicker board. So yet again, EarTech edging is not available for that sort of thickness, so it will not be on the selection. Edging thicknesses, maybe this one I want to be smoother as it's thicker, so I'm going with a 2mm edging, rounding 2mm, and again I'm doing on the 3 sides because it might be the same. Now these 2 options, they are literally exactly the same thing. Depends how you look at it, but you can rotate the boards unless the board has grain, and then it might be quite crucial, but it doesn't really make much of a difference. Again, add edging. Russian birch plywood, we showing edging option as well. You've got standard MDF, which some people would like to get the MDF spray finished, and they would not want to see layered edge, which would come up after it's been spray finished. So again, we can apply the same edging as for MDF, and it will mean that the edges will be smooth. So again, maybe top bottom is not seen. We can only see the two long edges. Again, let's do two long edges. That's it. It's not the highest grade plywood, but we can still use it. 9mm moisture resistant MDF. Unfortunately, we cannot etch. So I hope this video cleared out how the edging works, and let's move to the next step where I can guide you through hinges and finishing. Thank you.